Pete Alonso has officially left the New York Mets and was kind of expected this offseason, leaving the team to go to the Baltimore Orioles on a 5-year, $155 million contract. If it hasn't been made clear already, I think it's pretty clear now. David Stearns did not really enjoy Pete Alonso on this team, and it is time for David Stearns to really build his own version of this New York Mets team. But before we get into any of that, first things first, Pete Alonso is now gone. He was a Mets franchise legend. He will no longer be retiring as a career-long Met. This is a man who just signed a 2-year deal last offseason with an opt-out after the year, which is why he ended up becoming a free agent this year. And in that one last year with the Mets, he did end up breaking the Mets franchise all-time home run record. In a year last year where it was known that the clubhouse was a little bit fractured and a little dysfunctional, Pete Alonso was certainly not one of the problems in that locker room. He's kind of been the heart and soul of this team since being called up and back in, I believe, 2018 or 2019. He has been an absolute legend in the eyes of the fans, and the fact that we let him go is kind of ridiculous. And it's not really just the fact that we let him go to the Orioles on a 5-year deal. The fact of the matter is David Stearns did not even offer Pete Alonso a formal contract offer, because as soon as he heard that teams were going above 3 years for him, which they were surprised by, they decided to not offer him a single contract, which is just disrespectful in my opinion. Now with the loss of Pete Alonso, not only do we have a hole at first base, but we still have holes at left field. You could argue center field, as Tyrone Taylor is really the only option there. And then we also have holes at the starting pitching level, which has been a problem for all of last year. And then in the relief market, because Edwin Diaz is also gone, as he signed a deal with the Dodgers yesterday. Now, trying to think rationally, there are really only two options that I can see the Mets going down, and it is either going on a full-blown youth movement or going all in now on other options in free agency. So for the youth movement, they do have guys like Carson Bench, Jet Williams, and Ryan Clifford who can man, first base, center field, left field, which could clog some of those holes. We also have some young pitchers in Brandon Sproat, Nolan McLean, who will obviously be in the rotation. We have Jonah Tong as well, who showed some promise last year in AAA. He just needs a little bit more time there to develop, but he should be a good starter at the major league level. Now, if we do go for a full-blown youth movement, it would be kind of surprising to me if we don't also move on from Jeff McNeil, which I think he'll be gone no matter what, because the fact is, he was supposed to be the first one gone to kind of help fix that clubhouse dynamic, and he has been probably the last one to go out of Nimmo, Diaz, and Pete Alonso. But now it begs the question, will David Stearns even trade away Jeff McNeil? Because it is known that David Stearns loves positional versatility, and Jeff McNeil definitely does have that, as he can play second base, left field, center field, first base. He can play kind of all over the diamond. Part of that youth movement, it makes me question, will the Mets trade away Francisco Lindor and truly build this team around a guy like Juan Soto and just completely gut the team around him? Now, I think that parting with Francisco Lindor would be a little bit silly, and it kind of would make no sense. But if we are going in this direction where we are absolutely gutting this core and try to get a new group of guys onto this team, it would not surprise me too much if the Mets do make that blockbuster move of trading away Francisco Lindor, but that is something that I think even David Stearns would not do. Now, the other possibility for the Mets for the rest of this offseason is just going in on a bunch of different free agents to really make this team look different, but still keeping them very competitive. And guys that they could look at are guys like Cody Bellinger and Kyle Tucker. Now, Kyle Tucker could easily play left field for them. You could even put him in right if you want and move Soto to left field. You could put Cody Bellinger in left field, center field, or now that Pete Alonso is gone, it kind of makes him a better fit. Cody Bellinger can play first base. Now, I will say I would prefer him to play the outfield if we do sign him, just because of how good his defense is. But if he needs to be the opening day first baseman, that could definitely be a possibility. And if we continue to go all in on this free agent class, we could go for guys like Robert Suarez, guys like Tyler Rogers, who were on the Mets last year. You could also bring in guys like Pete Fairbanks to really bolster that bullpen below Devin Williams. But I think the thing that we're all forgetting is the fact that we do need starting pitching, and that was the reason for the collapse last year. So if you are going to go all in, you need to make a trade for one of Tariq Skubal, Freddie Peralta, or Mackenzie Gore from the Washington Nationals. And per a report from John Heyman, the Mets are in on Mackenzie Gore, which is a little bit exciting for the Mets because obviously we need starting pitching. He did have a down second half last year. However, I still think picking him up would be great for the Mets and would show that we are kind of committed to winning still next year. But now to play, the bearer of bad news, there was a report from Ken Rosenthal just about an hour ago where he says that there was no indication that the Mets are in on Kyle Tucker or Cody Bellinger. Though I do not necessarily believe this to be true because both guys would be great fits for the Mets right now. But let's say it is true. I think there will be a full-blown youth movement in Queens. And if Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger do sign elsewhere, that is where the Mets will be going in 2026. Another report that came out today from Tim Healy on X is that the Mets have discussed internally a Jeff McNeil and Paul Goldschmidt platoon at first base, And let me tell you, this would probably be the worst case scenario for the Mets. This would get people to not buy season tickets. People would be canceling their season tickets left and right. No one would want to go to the games because Jeff McNeil is a guy who Mets fans want gone after being kind of dysfunctional in that clubhouse and not being as productive of a player as he was just a couple of years ago. But pairing him with Paul Goldschmidt at first base in a platoon to try to replace the value of Pete Alonso, that is peak Moneyball at its finest. And in other discussions, the Mets have also been discussing trades with Kodai Senga and David Peterson, which is a new report from yesterday. Now, in my opinion, if we're not going to go out and get a guy like Skubal, a guy like Mackenzie Gore, a guy like Freddie Peralta, there's absolutely no reason for the Mets to trade either Kodai Senga or David Peterson. And at the beginning of the offseason, I was in favor of moving Kodai Senga, as he has been injured far too often in his MLB career. However, if the Mets aren't going to make a move at starting pitching in free agency, and you can't really depend on them making a move in the trade market, I think just keeping Kodai Senga around would be great for the team. But also David Peterson, I think, is a very good pitcher, and there is no reason to move him at all. Last but not least, can we even trust David Stearns to right the ship? Because to this point, the only big move that he has made is the signing of Juan Soto. And while it is a big move, it's kind of widely known that that was kind of all a Steve Cohen move. As Steve Cohen wanted him, Steve Cohen opened up a blank check for Juan Soto. And other than that, what David Stearns has done was bring in Frankie Montas. It was an absolute bust of a signing at the time, and he ended up being a bust. Last season, he was absolutely horrific. Ended up getting DFA'd, and we owe him $17 million this upcoming season to not play for us, as he just got Tommy John surgery. On top of that, at the trade deadline, he did not bring in a single starting pitcher. And the guys he brought in, other than Tyler Rogers, did not pan out too well. Most specifically, Cedric Mullins, who just signed a one-year deal with the Tampa Bay Rays. So Mets fans, this offseason has been nothing short of a disaster so far, but there is still some optimism if the Mets do decide to go all in on guys like Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger. But I want to know, what do you guys want the Mets to do for the rest of this offseason to make this one a successful one for you? Or was the loss of Edwin Diaz, Brendan Nimmo, and Pete Alonso too much for you to overcome, and this will just be a failure of an offseason no matter what happens? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.